the artist formerly known as LifeBridge Church. How you guys doing this morning? Awesome. Hey, if this is your first time here, if you're new to 242, my name is Keith. I'm one of the teaching pastors here. And I was just thinking about the exciting things that God is doing here at our church. And I was thinking about last week launch. How many of you were here for last week when we launched? Okay. Yeah, it was just a great weekend. A lot of people showed up here, Monroe, also in Livonia. But I think the most exciting part of it was the fact that we had 2 people get baptized. So can we celebrate that together? Wasn't that awesome? See, if you're new here, our mission is to help people take next steps with God. And I love that we're helping people take their first steps with God. Now, like Jake just said, today we're continuing this series that we've been in called Should Happens. I want everybody to say that with me. Everybody say, should happens. Because the reality is, the shoulds happen to every single one of us. See, you might not be able to see it, or you might not be able to tell it, but there's somebody in your section right now who are dealing with the shoulds. They might be sitting right next to you, in front of you, or behind you, but they're thinking to themselves thoughts that go like this. Like, there's some of you married men, and you're thinking to yourself, I really should apologize to my wife for last week, last month, last year. And there's some of you married ladies who are here today, and you're thinking to yourself, my husband really should apologize to me for last week, last month, last year. Can I get an amen from the ladies up in here? See, we all deal with the shoulds. There's some of you single folks who are in here, and you're dealing with the shoulds. You're thinking to yourself, I should have been more honest on my profile on christianmingle.com. You posted a picture of you from 8 years ago, and you know you don't look like that anymore. Come on, talk to me at this 9:30 service. But in all seriousness, there's some of you who are thinking to yourself, last week, I should have had more integrity in work. Last week, I was there, and I was in a moment, and I had an opportunity to tell the truth and not get the raise, or just shade the truth a little bit and get what I really wanted. There's some of you who are thinking to yourself, I should be less angry, less lustful, more cheerful, more generous. I should. There's some of you, and you came to church today, and you thought to yourself, as soon as I walked back from behind stage, you thought to yourself, Pastor Keith is here. He's one of my favorites. I should listen to him. Whereas there's others of you, and you had the exact opposite thought. You thought to yourself, Pastor Keith is here. I should have stayed home and binged on Netflix. Which, by the way, if you're thinking that, feel free to keep that to yourself. But here's my point, is we all deal with the shoulds. The question is, how do we deal with them? See, in the book, Clark defines the shoulds as expectations that we place on ourselves, on others, and on God. Expectations that drive us. See, there's some of you right now, and the reason you don't have peace, you don't have rest in your soul is because you always feel like you should be doing something more. You feel like you should be doing more for God. You feel like you should be doing more for your family. And that's why you don't have peace. You go on vacation, but you're not really on vacation because you feel like you should be doing something else. For many of you, this is why you're having relational conflict right now. It's because there's somebody in your life who you feel like should be doing something that they're not. Some of you parents are thinking, my kids should take more responsibility. They should listen to me more. Some of you students, some of you young adults are saying, my parents really should respect me more. They should respect my individuality. They made mistakes. They lived their life, and now they're trying to live my life. They should get off my case. But then lastly, for many of us, we take these expectations and we put them on God. There's some of you who are here today, and you're disillusioned in your faith because you feel like God is not doing something that you feel like he should be doing. You're thinking to yourself, I'm here at church, but I don't really know if I should be here, because the reality is God is not being the God who is good that I read about in the Bible. He should be giving me more peace. He should be giving me more provision. He should be helping me. And right now I feel like he's distant. I feel like when my prayers just hit the ceiling, God is not good. So why should I be good? We all deal with the shoulds. Today we're going to talk about how do we deal with that in relationship to others. If you got a Bible or a Bible app, we're going to be in Luke chapter 10 today. In Luke chapter 10, we're going to meet a family who interacts with Jesus. Now let me give you a little context of where we're at in the timeline of the life of Jesus. In Luke chapter 10, Jesus is on his final journey to Jerusalem. So Jesus' base is up north in Galilee. But Jesus is going to go down every year to Jerusalem for Passover. In Luke chapter 10, he's on that journey. Actually, Luke is going to spend a large part of his book talking about this final journey of Jesus. He's going to spend about 35% of his book talking about this final journey that Jesus is going to take to Jerusalem. From Luke chapter 9, verse 53 to Luke chapter 19, verse 23, he's talking about this one journey of Jesus. Now, if you've been coming to church, if you know the Bible, you know how the story ends. In Jerusalem, he's going to be captured and he's going to be crucified. But on this journey, he's going to have some moments. One of the moments he has, we see him in a rare picture. He's interacting with some people who are just his friends. See, most time when we read about Jesus and the journey that Jesus is on, and when he goes and visits people, it's mostly a formal pastoral visit. So when he goes to somebody's house, he's there for a purpose to heal somebody, to minister hope to somebody, or to give a public sermon. But here he's just hanging out with some people. And I want you to see the dynamic. So if you're there with me in Luke chapter 10, we're going to start in verse 38. Here's what Scripture tells us. It says, as Jesus and his disciples were on their way, talking about from Galilee in the north to Jerusalem in the south, he came to a village where a woman named Mary opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made, that she came to him and asked him, Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do this work by myself? Tell her to get up off her behind. Some of you got nervous. This is just the second week of launch. I ain't going to do that to you. Tell her to help me. And I want you to see Jesus' response. Because for somebody today, I think Jesus is saying these same words to you. Martha, Martha. Tim, Tim. Margaret, Margaret. Rachel, Rachel. You are worried and upset about many things. There's a lot of stuff that causes anxiety in your heart and in your soul. You're worried and you're upset about a lot of things, but few things are needed. Indeed, one, Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her. See, here's a story where you've got some people who feel pressure. Mary and Martha are having Jesus over, and imagine if Jesus was coming over to your house. See, I grew up in the deep South, and in southeast Louisiana and all throughout the South, there's this informal code called Southern hospitality. So if you can go to somebody's house, Southern hospitality requires, number one, that your house better be clean. You better give people a meal. And that meal should consist of some gumbo and some hot cornbread. It should be perfect. So Martha feels some of that pressure. Jesus is coming over to my house, and so I've got to make everything, put it all together. And so she's cooking and cleaning. And in the Middle East, you have to provide food and shelter. So Jesus is coming, and he's just not coming by himself. He's got 11 of his disciples. So you got to provide food, you got to provide shelter. Also, I imagine they're trying to make a good impression on Jesus. And so she's hiding all the rated R movies, and she's doing everything that she can, putting inspirational quotes of Jesus all over. And then, Judas is coming, so you want to hide all your money and hide your kids, hide your wife, because he'll steal it, So they're putting it all together. And she's feeling this pressure. And Jesus shows up at the door, and everything's not perfect. And Mary just welcomes him in. Jesus steps in, and he's stepping over trash and Chinese boxes, Chinese food boxes that are there. And Martha's just cleaning and cleaning and cleaning and cleaning, and she's frustrated. And you can imagine her just getting angry. Mary, this is Jesus. This is the Messiah. We're supposed to have a servant wash his feet. We're supposed to give him oil for his head, and you're just sitting there listening. And then she comes up to Jesus, and she just says, Jesus, you know the informal code. Don't you care that she's not doing her job, that she's not participating? And Jesus looks at her. He says, Martha, Martha, you're missing it. See, you're more worried about the preparations so you can impress me instead of being focused on my presence and allowing my presence to impact you. Can I just say this for a moment? There's some of you, and the reason you've given up on faith is because you have lived under a pressure, an expectation. You think that God's will for your life is you got to show up and you got to impress God. So you got to do everything right, and so you just feel pressure and pressure and pressure and pressure and pressure and pressure and pressure, and you just like, as good as I try to not swear, to be perfect in every dealing, I end up not always hitting a target. And Jesus ends up seeing me in my failures, in my weaknesses, in my brokenness. But can I tell you something? Jesus already knows who you are. He loves you as you are. And he still wants to come to your house. He still wants to be in relationship with you. Let me just flip this analogy one more time. Can I tell you why some of you come to church? And there's some Sundays you go, it was awesome. I'm telling you, it was incredible. It was amazing. And here's why you say that, because some of you come to church to be impressed. When you're not impressed by the message, when you're not impressed by the music, it was all right. Instead of understanding that the reason we come to church is to be impacted by God. So here's Martha, and she's stressed out, she's worried. And she's worried because she has this to-do list. It's all the things she feels like she should do, and it makes her feel like she's in control. But the problem with the shoulds is her to-do list is actually controlling her. Stealing her peace. Stealing her joy. Now, there's some of you who are here today and you're saying, Pastor, I feel like you're speaking to me. How did I get to this place? Here's how you got there. You followed the same process as Martha followed, and it started with unspoken job descriptions. See, in every relationship, we all have a job description that we have for other people. Now, in the workplace, a job description that's clearly communicated is essential. But a job description that is unspoken in relationships, it's toxic. And for some of you, that's your problem in your relationship. So here's Martha's problem is she has this unspoken expectation of Mary. She has an expectation of Jesus. And neither one of them are feeling this expectation. So she's getting worked up about it. But if you look at Scripture again, nowhere does she clearly say, this is what I need help with. This is what I think is important. What do you think is important, Jesus? Mary, can you help me with it? She's just filming over with this frustration on the inside. I'll give you an example from my own life. Over the Christmas holidays, me and my wife and my family, we chose to take a vacation down to Louisiana where I was born and raised. So the way it worked out is on Christmas, the weekend before Christmas, I preached all the weekend services, so 5 times. Then, Christmas Eve, I think it was like on a Tuesday this year, I preached 6 times on Christmas Eve. So because we were going down to spend some time with family, we were going to be down there about 5 or 6 days. What I decided to do was we're going to take it easy. We didn't even put up a Christmas tree because we're going to celebrate with the family and so forth. And so on Christmas Day, I just chilled, just rested. Took my kids to the movies, just kind of relaxed and so forth. And then the next day, because we were driving, there were no major expectations of kind of where we're going to put stuff in the car and all that type of stuff. We were just going to go through the process. So what I decided to do was I was just going to chill. We'll clean up the next day. Well, I wake up and my wife is standing at the end of the bed and she is looking at me with that like stink eye. Have you ever had that stink eye from your wife? And I don't know why. Well, here's why she was so frustrated. Because she had stayed up all night packing, we got 4 kids, so packing for herself and then all 4 kids, and I'm sleeping. So I get up and I'm just kind of relaxed and so forth, and she's like, you didn't help me. And in my mind, I'm thinking, well, I didn't know that's what we were doing. And then she was like, and then we got to clean the house and pressure. So she had this expectation we're going to leave early in the morning. I felt like we could leave whenever we wanted to leave. And so both of us had this frustration because we had these unspoken expectations that led to anger. Can I ask you, how many times does this happen in your relationships? For some of you, with your kids, you have unspoken expectations. Here's your expectation. Let me live your life for you. I know better than you do. I know how to do this. And so you have this unspoken expectation. And so when they make their own choices, you're frustrated because they are not living and following the job description that you gave them, that you didn't communicate to them. Some of you have this kind of unspoken relationship with your friends. And this is why you have tense relationships, because you have this unspoken expectation. Your expectation of them is, as soon as I call you or text you, you should call me back or text me back within 24 seconds. But if you call me, you know that I'm busy. I got stuff to do. I'm trying to accomplish stuff in life, so I will get back with you when I can. And these unspoken expectations lead to challenge and frustration. Here's the second part of the process, is that not only do we have these unspoken job descriptions, we tend to hold people accountable to these job descriptions that we never told them about. This is why things are tense right now in your relationships. Because you're mad at somebody right now, because you had an expectation of them. They were not aware of that expectation, and now you're trying to hold them accountable. You're yelling, you're screaming, and they don't understand why you're yelling and screaming, and now they become defensive, and so you got this situation where there's tension. I mean, go back to Mary and Martha. Mary's not just mad at Mary, she's mad at Jesus. Because she just assumes they should understand. Jesus, aren't you going to tell her to do something? Aren't you going to tell her, help me? Of course, we were supposed to have this perfect environment for you to show up, and you are not doing what I expect of you, and now you should be accountable for it. Here's the final part of that process. It always ends like this, is we end up angry and resentful. Not only us, but it's the people we're in relationship with. Many of you right now have a fractured relationship, and you don't understand why. You're frustrated, you're resentful when that person walks in the room, when they come in church, you're angry because you had an expectation of them that you never communicated, and now you're going to hold them accountable by you being angry and resentful of them. But can I give you a little secret? They feel the same way about you. They're holding on to some stuff in their heart and in their soul because they didn't feel like it was clear. It was an easy playing field. So what does Jesus do to help Martha? Jesus is going to help Martha move through this process. He's going to say, okay, listen, Martha, you're stressed out about a lot of stuff. Your hair is on fire. You're all worked up emotionally. Let me tell you how to move past this. Remember when you guys were in school? If you ever found yourself on fire, what did the teacher tell you to do? Stop, drop, and roll. Some of you sound like you did not know that, and that's making me a little nervous here. What are they teaching in the Taylor Public Schools here? Here's what Jesus is going to do for Martha. In effect, here's the first thing he says to Martha. Martha, stop. Martha, Martha. You're worried and upset about all of this stuff. And you've never stopped to even consider if what you're worried about is legitimate. You've never stopped to consider all the stuff that you're doing to impress me, if that's really what I expect from you. Stop. For some of you, what God wants to say to you today is you need to stop. Your shoulds are pushing you, and then you're pushing everybody else, and you got all of this pressure on you because your parents put pressure on you that you need to make straight A's, and you're putting that pressure on your kids, and you're just pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing. And God's just saying, stop. Is that the most important thing? You're going a mile a minute. You're pushing yourself and you're pushing yourself. And is that really what's most important in your life? Here's what I've learned when it comes to dealing with the shoulds in our life. It's for many of us, we have to have a breakdown before we have a breakthrough. What I mean by that is we're pushing and we're going so fast that it's not until the wheels kind of fall off that we realize, wow, I wasn't paying attention to what was actually most important. This week, I was reading about Wayne Cordeiro. Wayne Cordeiro, if you don't know who he is, he's a pastor in Hawaii, and he is a very successful pastor. His book, Leading on Empty, he talks about a season in his life where he was just going at a rate that was just unstoppable. Everything that he was leading was going up and to the right. So he started a church, and that church became a mega church. Then he started a Bible college, and that Bible college grew. He started several other churches, and then next thing you know, he's leading this network of churches. And so everything he's leading is going up and to the right. But in his own soul, he felt like it was going down and to the left. In the book, Leading on Empty, he talks about how one day he's going out for this jog. He said, I have become really disciplined in the discipline of image management, making people think that I have it all together. He says, as I'm just kind of running average jog, the next thing I know is I find myself on the side of the road weeping my eyes out. It was at that moment that I realized I was under way too much pressure. It was time for me to stop and really realize, was I supposed to be doing all the stuff that I was supposed to be doing? Was I supposed to be putting pressure on people the way that I was putting pressure on others? And the reason I was doing that is because I was living under that pressure. He went and saw a doctor, and what the doctor said is, the doctor said, and I'm not a doctor, so I'll just say what he said in the book. He said that in your body, there's this chemical called serotonin. And serotonin replenishes when you rest. But if you don't give yourself enough time to rest and slow down, what happens is you start living on adrenaline. You were not meant to live on adrenaline. So what happened to you is you're just pushing, and what you've done is you burned out your system. What he did was he checked into a monastery, so no cell phone, no email. And while he's there, he said, it felt like as I'm coming down off this adrenaline high, it felt like I was coming down off like a drug. And I was able to deal with my own shoulds. When I started having a realistic expectation of myself, I started having a realistic expectation of others. For some of you right now, the reason you put so much pressure on people is because you're under pressure and you just need to stop. But then if we go back to Martha, here's the second thing Jesus is saying in effect, is you need to listen. Stop and listen. He says you need to do what Mary's doing. Mary's listening at my feet, getting knowledge, understanding. She's connecting with me, whereas you're trying to impress me. Can I help you in your relationships? What will change in your relationship is it will change when you start learning how to listen to people. And let me give you a little secret. Listening is not waiting to speak while someone else is talking. Listening is when I connect. I hear your heart. I understand your perspective. At no point does Martha ever ask Jesus, ever ask Mary to understand why they're doing what they're doing. She just assumes that she has all the right ideas. Pride is a very subtle thing in our lives. That we think that we know what everybody should be doing, how they should be living their life, how they should be spending their money. But what would happen if you just listened to people? Here's what I think is true about how people who are outside the church sometimes view the church, is they view us as people who only have our story to tell and we don't listen to other people's story. Our message of Jesus Christ crucified for the sins of the world is the best message in the world. But one of the reasons I think people can't hear it is because we don't hear them first. We don't listen to their story. In Philippians chapter 2, verse 3 and 4, the Apostle Paul says this. He says, do nothing out of selfish ambition and vain conceit, but in humility value others better than yourselves. And then in verse 4, it says, not looking on to your own interests, but the interests of others. When I listen to someone, what I'm saying is, you have value. I value you. I value how you feel. I value your process. I might not understand it, I might not agree with it, but I value it. You know, at the times in my marriage when it's been the most difficult, oftentimes what I've heard my wife saying on the other side of that is, Keith, I just want you to listen. I don't expect you to understand everything about me. I don't expect you to understand. I just need you to listen, to really connect. But then here's the final thing. If we go back to Martha, I think what Jesus is saying is, in effect, is stop, listen, and give up control. Here's why you're so frustrated, is because you're trying to control Mary and you're trying to control me, and you were not meant to control other people. There's only one person that you were meant to control. The fruit of the Spirit, Galatians chapter 5, verse 22 and 23, one of the fruit of the Spirit is self-control. And when you stop and you listen, you stop trying to control people. And here's what will happen when you start to really care about other people and really start to listen and really understand that I can't change you. But what I can do is I can change myself. I can create an environment where we can make the best decision together. As I move from trying to control you to compromising, and our relationship gets better. As I bring this message to a close, I'd love to ask you, what state of mind are you in right now? Are you in a Martha state of mind where you're worried and upset about a lot of things? Worried about politics, worried about your kids, worried about your wife, worried about your job, worried about your boss. Are you just worried and consumed by a lot of things? Maybe God wants to say to you, stop. Stop. You don't have to be going at the pace that you're going. You don't have to fix everything in the world. Listen. Listen to the people who are closest to you that you're putting pressure on. Listen, understand their point of view. Listen to God. Last week we talked about in Matthew chapter 11 how Jesus says, come to me, all you who are weary and heavy burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I'm gentle and humble in heart. And then he says, you will find rest for your soul. Truly following Jesus is a place of rest. I don't deny that there's issues and there's challenges and there's problems in my relationship, but I just rest because I trust God. And then lastly, maybe God's calling you to give up control. With that, we're going to enter into a time around here that we call encounter. An encounter is